Thank you, President Officer. A number of parts of my regional area feature in the National Planning Framework, and I wanted to highlight some of them. Scapa flow remains not just of national but of international significance, and the same features that made Scapa a haven during the wartime also gives it peacetime potential of deep water, great sheltered water, but also being to the north of our nation. And the transshipment hub that's sought for Scapa would be enormously important and of international significance. And it could bring very important development to Scotland, but also to Orkney. And I'm pleased to see that it remains as a clear priority within the NPF, and I hope that that will help it make progress. The Cromarty Firth, Presiding Officer, was also a significant wartime base for the same reasons as Scapa, and it's continued to offer very major economic development for the Highlands, particularly since the 1970s. An oil terminal, an oil construction base, rig repair, and now a cruise ship port all feature in the local economy of the Cromarty Firth. And despite that development, it still has some of the cleanest waters around our coastline. But the Cromarty Firth is not reaching its full potential by any means. It has significant capacity yet to offer more. And NIG within the Cromarty Firth sits at the heart of the largest skill base in the energy sector in the UK. Within easy travel distance of NIG, we have Scotland's hydro, wind and nuclear expertise. And NIG is strategically placed at the heart of those skills. And we don't have a lot of time to allow those skills of that generation who have got them to transfer to the next generation. And NIG and the wider Cromarty Firth has the potential to do that with the right kind of development. And that needs to be high-skill development and not just breakers' yards. And the NIG dry dock itself is of national importance, the only facility of that kind in the United Kingdom, and indeed arguably the best facility in Europe. And we need a socially responsible owner of that facility in order to develop its full potential. I have to say I'm disappointed that the Cromarty Firth and NIG don't feature more strongly in the NPF, and I hope the Government will still address that and allow that to happen. Another area, this time Argyll and Bute, want to feature more in the NPF as well. And I've had representations from the local council about both the need for their disappointment of the fact that the subsea cable they would like to see from Hunterston to Carradale does not feature in the National Planning Framework. And they believe it should, and I hope the Government will also look at that matter again. If such a cable did exist, indeed if other cables existed elsewhere in the Highlands Islands which are mentioned, it would offer both Argyll and Bute and the wider Highlands and Islands the chance to contribute even more fully to meeting the national renewable objectives. And indeed this issue of subsea cables generally need to get the priority they deserve. There are potential environmental benefits from that compared to landline transmission in the longer term. And the Western Isles and Orkney and Shetland, the west coast of the Highlands, all have potential to contribute more to our renewable targets, but that energy needs to be transported. And again, I hope the Government will give the necessary priority to subsea infrastructure over time. Now, these big issues, the potential of Scapa, Cromarty Firth, Argyll and Bute and the wider Highlands from subsea cables, are areas where I've received representations for inclusion in the National Planning Framework. And part of the motivation for that seeking inclusion is to ease the path of development. Now, that contrasts very substantially with exactly the opposite view I've been getting from a number of constituents, and they're deeply concerned that the impact on their community of being mentioned in the NPF is indeed a way of shortcutting planning procedures and full democratic scrutiny. And I refer in this instance to the mention of the A96 corridor between Inverness and Nairn in the NPF, and the Tornagreen development in particular. Now, I've got personal reservations about that development, and as an adjacent resident, I should make that clear to Parliament, lest anyone feels I have not declared an interest. Now, one of the most successful communities in Scotland in the recent decades has been Inverness. Inverness needs to continue to expand, and that does mean more land for development. The A96 corridor has been identified by Highland Council as a strategic corridor for development, and that in turn is recognised in the NPF. But therein lies the problem for the constituents making recommendations or representations to me. They are deeply concerned that their right to take part and influence planning decisions is to some extent being compromised by the very existence of a mention of Tornagreen in the NPF. And in this case, Tornagreen is in the NPF before the area is approved as a zone for development in the local development plan. And they feel too that the consultation, which others have mentioned, on the National Planning Framework is inadequate. I would be grateful if I could just go through this, and maybe you can pick it up in your reply. If the NPF is to effectively ease the passage of certain specific developments which figure in the final plan, then they believe the consultation isn't adequate. And I think there's a genuine and real dilemma here. If figuring it in the NPF is a means of easing the planning process, some will feel the rights are compromised. But for other people, it's the exact easing of that process that's the attraction of a mention in the NPF. And I believe the genuine concerns of some of those that I am here to represent need to be addressed if the status and worth of the NPF is not to be undermined. And I'd be grateful if in his summing up the Minister can clarify the Government's position on that. I mean, will, for example, my constituents be able to expect that the local development plan process will continue unaffected by the mention in the NPF? And will the potential of a public inquiry also be unaffected by its mention? Does the mention of a specific development in the NPF predetermine that the local development plan will contain that development, and will mention in the development of the development in the NPF be a material consideration in ministers finally reaching a decision on specific applications? And I'd be grateful if the Minister could answer that. I'll close now, Presiding Officer. I haven't had time to mention the Western Isles, which I'd have liked to have done, and the A82, but I'll come back to that on another occasion.